tree bends. Here you're looking at some small diameter tree bends. This first one actually bends over and is tied into my back fence, the fence between my property and where a clan of the big fellas lives. Now there are at least 6 bends you can see in this clip. And by small diameter bends, what I mean is they're 1.5 to about 2.5 inches in diameter at the base. And a tree bend is generally described as a tree that's bent over to form a bow, and the tip of it is either held down by something or tied into another tree or bush. It's classic big fella sign. The next bend I'm going to talk about is a large diameter bend. This one is impressive. That tree is 5-6 inches in diameter at the base, and it's at least 30 feet long. And it bends over, and the tip of that tree has been shoved down into the ground, probably 2 feet deep. And it's quite impressive. Took a pretty good size fella to bend that over, hold it down, and shove it into the ground deep enough and firm enough that it wouldn't spring back up. You see one of these out in the woods, you can just about bet that you're on the track of the big fella. You're in his range. I'm walking over to stand underneath the bend, and I'm holding my arm fully extended over my head with the camera in it, and I'm still a foot short of the bottom of that tree. So the bottom of that bend is up about 8 feet. Pretty impressive. Now here's another bend. That's about a 2.5 to a 3-inch diameter pine at the base. And it's bent over, and the tip of the tree is shoved down into this clump of palmettos. That's what's holding it in place. Now the next thing you'll find are what I call signposts. They are obviously constructed and they mean something. Here's one that I found down in the creek bottom. And that limb, which is a dissimilar tree than the tree that it's configured into, is placed in the fork of that tree, and it has that pine brawl with a couple of pine cones laid on it. And then it's bent in torsion around that tree, and then it is configured so that it goes through the fork of that little myrtle bush that's sticking up, and it's pointing down the trail in the direction that I came from. Now this was constructed. Nature didn't do this. And it means something. Obviously, to me it means, hey, go that way, pointing down the trail. But maybe it doesn't mean that at all. There's the trail. Now let's talk about tree breaks. This first break, I heard being broken. It was up trail of me. I heard a violent shaking of what sounded like a tree, and then a loud snap. It froze me in place for a moment, and then I snuck on down the trail. There's the trail, and there's the break, and it was fresh. It had just been done. I heard it. Now, this next break is a twist break. This tree was twisted and broken down. And that's about 2.5 inches in diameter. And I'm going to reach up to the top of it. That's about 7 feet off the ground. Now, it takes some considerable power to twist and break down a tree like that. If you look for these things and you find them, that's a pretty good indication that the big fella has been there. Now, this is a double set of breaks that's on a tree on my property. It's just my side of my fence. They live on the other side. And this happened New Year's Eve. And I heard it being broken from the back porch. And I ran out there and had a confrontation with the big fella that I think runs the clan. About, 20 yards apart. Glyphs. What do glyphs mean? Well, they are obviously meant to mean something. Here's one that was left for me in my backyard the day after I had the confrontation with the big fella that did those double breaks. I think what this means is the top pyramid with the stick in it, there's where they come in from, represents them outside the fence, and the opposing triangle represents my side of the fence. That's what I think. I don't know. Need more evidence, but it certainly means something. Taken in situation, I think that's what it means. Now, this glyph was found in the Everglades in 2009 by my friend David Wright. He is a biologist and he is studying Sasquatch. This was left at their camp. Now, you'll notice the stick that's laying across the smaller stick that forms a square, and then inside the mouth of that is yet a smaller stick that also forms a square. Well, there's pattern there, and that means something. I think it means, hey, we came by your camp and you were in the tent. But who knows? Time will tell. Exes. Everybody wants to talk about exes. What do they mean? Well, here's one I found in the creek bottom about a mile from my house. It's not natural. It was constructed. Those two logs were placed in that X formation through the crotch of a tree. Some folks think it means something as simple as, hey, X marks the spot. I don't see that. Some folks think it means, hey, don't come here. I'm not sure about that either. But it does mean something. The X. Footprints. What do they mean? Well, I think they mean something walked there and left a footprint. Now this first print is real unusual. That's my boot beside it, and that makes it about 15 and a half, 16 inches long. But look at the toes. The big toe upper left is separated from the rest of the toes on the right by a big gap. This fella, I believe, lost a toe. He at least had some damage done because those toes are curled down into the sand. Very unusual print. And for sure, this guy will not be hard to track. Now, here's a more conventional print. You notice it's kind of blocky. It's wide and it's long. It also is about 15 and a half to 16 inches. And you can clearly see the toe pattern. And this is pressed down into that sand over an inch deep. It's quite impressive. I believe if you ran up on this fella, you'd have quite an experience. I don't know that you can correlate the foot size necessarily to the ultimate size of its maker, but it's an interesting concept. Sticklings. Let's look at a couple of sticklings. Now here's a small ling. This is very subtle. It's dissimilar woods, meaning the limb that's leaned in the crotch of that small tree is not the same wood as the tree. And it's very subtle. When you're out looking for the big fella and looking for sign, you really got to be sharp to spot these things because they are very subtle. And this means something. The big fella's just not out there running around doing this stuff at random. This is a marker. What exactly it means, I don't know. I have some ideas about what all of this means, but I'm not really ready to make a pronouncement. Now let's look at a bigger ling. This one would be pretty hard to mistake. That's around 14, 16 feet long. It's a pine, bark skint, and there it is. Now I want to look at a compound bend. I call it compound because it's not just bent over and tied down. This jack oak is bent around that pine tree and pulled over, and the tip of the tree is stuck down beside a smaller scrub oak. And the whole thing is in tension. It has tension on it. Very interesting. Compound bend. What does it all mean? But I'm going to find out. So stay tuned. And I appreciate you watching.